Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Radcast. I'm Jamin Chively, broadcasting from Whidbey Island, Washington. Very happy to be joined by Michael, who's way out in Thailand. How you doing, Michael?
Doing well, Jamin. Good to be here.
Awesome. Great to see you. Okay, and great to be with you all who are watching, or who watch the recording, rather. So what I wanted to talk about, Michael, is I wanted to get into, just in very simple terms, what are we up to? What's our goal? How do we think we can achieve it? What's going to be necessary? Who's going to be necessary? All these big questions. And I'll give you a little bit of the context for this, which is that, for the last few years, we've been working on, developing the collective intelligence platform. And just in the last few days, our thinking has greatly expanded to, yes, we need to continue that work, and we may need to open some real physical facilities in the near future in various locations, basically being community cafes, which would then extend to being community stores, community gardens, all kinds of, community and nature services, right? And that would be, and, eventually including housing. And so that would expand to ultimately encompass the entire vision of Arcology, which I don't define just as the city part, but it's really the art and practice and engineering of humanity interacting with Mother Earth, coexisting with Mother Earth in a way that we add value and that we're healing and regenerative rather than destructive as we have been.
Yeah, Arcologies in the expansive sense of the word.
Yeah, exactly. In the maximally expansive sense of the word. And so these facilities that we're thinking about building in partnership with a lot of other organizations would be kind of like the seed nucleus of Arcology, right? We start with these nuclei, and their respective spheres of influence grow and grow and grow and overlap, and ultimately, we have a world mediated by Arcology and a humanity moderated by Arcology. Extremely important concepts, right? And so that Arcology essentially becomes, let's put it this way. If radical collective intelligence is the brain of the humanity of the future, Arcology is the exoskeleton of the humanity of the future, right? It's our infrastructure. So we now have brain, and then imagine this amazing exoskeleton, right? Pick your favorite metaphor. One that comes to mind is from the movie Avatar, those horrific robotic exoskeletons. But anyway, I don't want to go down that rat hole, but, with supercharged brain and supercharged exoskeleton, including, and that exoskeleton would not just be like human dwellings and, factories and such. It would include geoshading systems, right? That's all part of the, anyway, so, but here's the large.
I have a question.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So, so why call them Arcologies when Arcologies, as you've already said, does refer to these city-like.
Yeah.
So why use the word Arcology? And I can just hear Gaz, speaking up and saying something wise.
Well, I'll tell you what. No, if Gaz were here, he would definitely speak up and say something wise. So I'm going to say something foolish instead, which is instead of using the noun Arcology or Arcologies as being like cities, okay? Instead, what I'm going to propose here is that we simply use one term, Arcology, like one would use the term architecture, right? You don't say, hey, build me an architecture. No, architecture is that which pertains to the design of any manner of.
Interesting. Kind of like the arcology of a community cafe, for
Well,
example.
well, I would just use arcology as the discipline, like economics, right? And you sell them, or architecture, right? And
Yeah. Well, that would be like saying the architecture of a community cafe versus the arcology of it.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. Great. Great. Love it. And for me, the we're using arcology as a field, right, in its broadest possible sense, which includes
A discipline.
A discipline in its broadest possible sense, which includes humanity's interaction with nature, with wildlife, with all manner of ecosystems. And so anyway, we're just using it in the broadest possible. It would ultimately encompass and include geoshading, holistic land management, ocean management, carbon sequestration, you name it. All of the above. And of course, our entire set of living arrangements, etc. So anyway, so what was really interesting, back to the bigger point I was making earlier, is that up until a few days ago, we'd basically been thinking, we just got to focus on this collective intelligence. We got to get this collective intelligence, moving, and it will, basically figure everything else out. Well, the recruiting of people to participate in collective intelligence has been so slow going, right? That got us to wondering, what's missing. And then we also thought about the enormous opportunity in the marketplace to do something that's sustainable and actually regenerative. And if you combine that question of what's missing with the potential of a community cafe, community store, and eventually, you can imagine, a whole warehouse size facility that has those and a community health clinic, community housing, library, video conferencing rooms, sports and recreation. And then if it's surrounded by wildlife, you've got parks, you've got trails, you've got bicycle paths, you've got all kinds of stuff you can do. So we figure if we build, even a very early version of one of those things, a community cafe, right, with bulk foods and, dairy products and all kinds of stuff, but no plastic bags of any kind. In fact, no single use anything. All packaging, everything would be multiple use. Washable, reusable, in theory, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of times, glass containers, metal containers and such. Combine those two things, the what's missing and the potential for what we can do with such facilities. And what starts to emerge, I'll just cover aspects or facets of it because it's a really rich conversation that we haven't even explored the boundaries of. But just consider one facet that in the process of people experiencing these community cafes and the magic of them and the community that they create and all that, I mean, they would become hubs of conversation, hubs of collective intelligence, but face-to-face in the real world. That one facet is that by people, hearing about this and coming to check it out and then seeing with their own eyes, why tell them when you can show them? Let's showcase what the future can look like. These businesses of the future, right? And that they're
Go ahead.
Yeah,
it reminds me of the McCaffrey brainstorming video where he says, some are top-down thinkers, some are bottom-up thinkers, right? Let them come together where they meet. Here, it's kind of more like some are abstract and some are concrete. Now, it's an oversimplification, But some are going to be drawn more to the abstract theoretical, right, nature of, say, radical CI, whereas others may be much more drawn to its, concrete manifestation in the real world.
Totally, totally. But the two need each other, right? Because radical CI is not meant to be just some isolated ivory tower that just comes up with cool ideas. It's ultimately about getting stuff done. Kind of like what Karl Marx said about philosophy. Philosophers interpret the world, right? I want to, transform it or something like that.
Yeah, the point is to change it.
The point is to change it. That's it. And that's exactly where we're coming from. The point is to change the world. So radical collective intelligence needs Arcology implemented. And I also posit that the reverse is true, that Arcology needs radical collective intelligence or some form of collective intelligence in order to, function properly and be optimally designed and all that. So let me read a passage from a book. It's a very short passage. It'll take me a minute or so to read. And then I want you to guess who wrote it. This section is called Building the Foundation. Build where all cities would proudly reach. Keep it out of nations' borders, free from gripping politics. Its culture grows of Earth's reflection. Try not the model society here. Earthinia has a function. This would be like the capital city, Earthinia. Earthinia has a function. It synthesizes, brings together the ideas, the actions, the life of humankind. An ongoing convention of global culture. A computer bank of worldly data. A forum for solutions. Make it bold, make it noble. Plan for glory, plan it wisely. Do it right as time allows. There is no cause more worth your while. Now, may I read you the next section, which is close on its heels. Ready? Okay. This is called Earthinia Vision. It may turn out differently, but it would seem to be in creating the world city that something unavoidable would happen. The peoples of world culture, representing genetic regions, societies of many lands, would recognize a new order, the cities. The city network is the structure of global industrialization and environmental technology. The cities, with their symbiotic rural areas, are nerve centers of Earth consciousness. The cities are our cultural peaks, our points of reference on this spherical garden. A sphere of natural wonder, water and land domains, dotted with knots of soul light, dolphin herds, whales, human cities, ... Know it. Your country, your nation, your motherland is Earth. Let us build the crown, the city of cities, Earthinia. Now, this was published in 1983. Can you guess who the author was? Just take a wild guess, if you feel like it. If not, just take a pass and say, Jamin, tell me.
Here's a wild guess.
Yeah, tell me.
Joseph Campbell.
No, great guess. This is a book published in 1983 called We Are It. And the author is Michael Gosney.
Wow.
We Are It. Okay. So That's what I'm talking about, okay? In terms of what arcology can become, right? It can be this network of cities that has a, that really fulfills on its stewardship responsibility to Mother Earth, right? So anyway, what we finally figured out in the last few days is that we really need to actually begin to build the seeds of these arcology, the seeds of the future cities. In many cases in situ, right? We transform cities in place. In other cases, we go more blank slate, like what we're going to start here on Whidbey Island. Right, it's not blank slate, but this very low population density, lots of land, lots of farmland, lots of forest, lots of water. So it's kind of like,
well, arguably it's both in situ and blank slate.
Yeah,
somewhere like would be.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, can you hear me okay if I talk softly, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I need to tone it down a little. So anyway, in no matter where we do arcology, no matter where we practice it, it's always going to be at some point between the spectrum of transforming that which already exists and blank slate, right? If we transform Manhattan, there's a lot that's already built out there. We're probably not going to do a lot of blank slate building there, though there may be some. But if you go to the middle of the Nevada desert or something, it's blank slate. Anyway, whatever we do, it'll be somewhere between those two extremes. And just realizing this, that the two need each other. Radical collective intelligence needs arcology, implemented, and vice versa. That was a big insight. And so because of that, it caused me to take a step back and say, well, what else might we be missing? If we were foolish enough to miss that huge piece, in terms of a strategy to get this whole thing rolling, right? Because once we have, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting that we missing in practice, because we've done very little on this front, but we've certainly on and off talked about the necessity of actually building, an arcology of sorts, building
building within the discipline of arcology.
Yeah. But then, for whatever reason, kind of putting that to one side and then coming back to it. But I think this time we're revisiting it at a higher level, probably in part. I could think of a few reasons why it's taking on the sort of urgency now, both because of where we are with the Radish platform, also because of Gaz's Sierra Club talk, and then thirdly, I would say because a lot of other avenues we've gone down haven't been quite the thoroughfares we thought maybe they were or would be. And it's kind of like, at the end of the day, instead of approaching this or that person or institution, we need to be the hub of making something happen, right? Practicing arcology, right? The praxis, right? If CI, it's kind of like CI is the theory of which arcology is the praxis.
Exactly. That's it.
And praxis makes perfect, or so they say. We have to put theory into praxis.
Right. Exactly. And I think arcology is kind of the, maybe not the perfect word, but it's darn good. It'll do for now. So anyway, so back to my kind of big epiphany about, another big epiphany, which is kind of a meta epiphany, is that, it took us, a long time to realize that that was going to be so crucial. What else is out there that it's taking us a long time to realize that we haven't realized yet? And so that got me thinking kind of big picture. So let me just kind of screen share here. Do you see that on the screen there? It's like some drawings.
Yep.
Okay. So let me just kind of talk about this. So I'm just going to highlight in yellow a couple things. Ultimately, we want us to find a pathway for humanity to move forward in a way that's healing of Mother Earth and that will preserve life on Earth. Now, I'm postulating that this whole curve that you see here, this whole thing, including the shaded area, right? What's that all about? That is the horizontal axis. As you go to the right, you get to higher and higher degrees of getting it. To what degree does one get it, right? Like if you're way out here to the far right, you're like, the Dalai Lama or something. And over here, this extreme is you don't get anything at all. You don't understand anything at all about what's going on planetarily, etc. So if this dimension is degree of getting it / enlightenment, right, for lack of a better word, what I'm postulating is that at the lower levels of getting it is where perhaps the bulk of humanity is at. That may be an unfair oversimplification and judgment, but whatever. The big point is that there's some threshold, minimum degree required to engage in strategy and planning and implementation conversations in a way which actually moves the mission forward, right? You have to get it in order to be able to essentially, roll and hang with us and be a positive contribution, right? And, examples of people who have cleared that bar to the right are like all the regulars on the social club at the end of the world, most of the people who came to the Sierra Club dinner, the Radish team, this other group related to Extinction Rebellion that we connected with in San Francisco, right? So anyway, these are all folks over here who've cleared the bar, all right? And it's a very high bar, and therefore I postulate that the percentage of the population that clears the bar is very, very small. Could be far less than 1% of the population. And here's what I mean by that. Let's take Jamin Shively, 12 years ago, right? Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth had come out recently. And I saw it in the theater, and then I got the DVD, and I must have watched it at home at least a couple dozen times, at least 25 times, maybe 30, right? And I had to watch it and watch it and watch it and listen to it over and over and over for it to really hit me how dire the situation was, right? Is. So anyway, prior to me really assimilating that stuff, I was probably somewhere over here, on the graph. You see what I'm saying? Right? I yes, I understood a lot of stuff, but I was not mature enough in my understanding of it so as to, um, you know, be ready to actually move the mission forward. Right? I was too busy focusing on making money and, helping Microsoft beat Google and all that stuff. I really wasn't focused on the mission. Anyway, moving on. So, so a big part of our job, I would say, is, let me just erase some of that yellow. So a big part of our job is to find this segment over here, identify them, and get them engaged in a positive way, right? Well, what might that look like? So anyway, so then I started thinking, well, what are the steps? Well, we need to identify these segments of the population. They probably represent different segments, of course. And then the next step could be identify those perspectives within each segment. What are their perspectives? With a huge nod to that article that Tony sent us, right? That super long article. Okay, so I'm going to include. I'm just going to make a note to include that article.
Yeah, super long, but a lot shorter than a full-length book.
Exactly, very readable within a couple hours, or a lot less if you're a fast reader. So this whole concept of perspectives is so vitally important, to understand the perspectives that exist within that segment of the population. And then check this out, Michael. Identify and co-create strategies consistent with and sense making, that they make sense with each perspective. You see what I'm saying? Like for each perspective, there's a set of strategies that make sense. And other strategies just don't make sense for that perspective. Right?
That's right.
Like we've met up with over our travels, so to speak, environmentalists, people who are very in favor of carbon sequestration, but who do not agree with the level of urgency as expressed by, say, Guy McPherson, right? And so they have a perspective which leads them to focus on the strategy of carbon tax, right? Whereas our perspective, enlightened by Guy McPherson and many others, is that yes, we need to do a carbon tax, but right now what we need to do is geoshading. We need to refreeze the Arctic. We cannot afford to lose all Arctic ice. Right? We need major interventions. So you see how coming from different perspectives leads to different strategies that make sense. One of those environmentalists is Dan Miller, super proponent of the carbon tax and everything, but doesn't want to have anything to do with Guy McPherson.
Again, perspective.
That's a perspective. He has his perspective. I have a very different perspective, which is that the situation is a lot more urgent than what a carbon tax can fix. Right? Anyway, so identify and co-create strategies. Let me get this back on the screen. Strategies consistent with and that make sense with each perspective. So each different perspective is going to come up with its own strategies. The Dan Millers of the world are going to come up with carbon tax. The Jamin Shiveleys of the world are going to come up with geoshading, holistic land management, CCC, collective intelligence, and a whole bunch of other stuff, right?
This reminds me of when we were talking the other day about mapping, one's brain and then another person's brain. And then there are certain points at which those two connect. But as you move from one brain to another, in some cases, you're seeing the same topic, but from another perspective.
Exactly. And, you know, I remember on one of your recent trips to Whidbey Island, we spent like 2 or 3 days going deep into this perspective stuff, you know, mapping it out on that big wide paper. And, you know, I remember at the time, like at the end of that, I was like, why the hell did we go so deep into perspectives? Well, we were actually mapping out a quantitative, not just qualitative, but quantitative way of defining perspective and specifying perspective. And you know, one of the mechanisms for making it quantitative is having a set of questions, right? That says, you know, that basically address, you know, questions like the melting of the Arctic ice. How urgent is that? How much time do we have? Can we afford to lose it? Blah, blah, blah. By answering those questions, a lot of them are just simple yes or no questions. We identify from what perspective a person stands or sits, that they're looking at the world through that lens. And then, of course, once you know that, context is decisive. Once you have an understanding of a person's context, you know, it's very clear where they're coming from and why they would favor one strategy over another, right? So, anyway, moving on in what I've got in these images here, let each segment of the population organize and develop and implement each strategy that corresponds to it. So let's say there's, you know, 100 different segments with 100 different strategies. Let 100 flowers bloom. If there's 1,000 different segments that come up with 1,000 different strategies, let 1,000 flowers bloom, right? And so here's kind of a picture of what I'm talking about. Actually, I kind of go a little bit deeper with this picture, a little bit more complexity. And here's what I mean by that. So you start with these segments, right? These are kind of slices of this portion here. Imagine you slice that up into segments. And in fact, you know, this gets directly to what we were talking about perspectives. We can actually quantify degrees of enlightenment by what you understand, what you get, versus what you haven't gotten yet. And in many cases, it's just a matter of time or education or whatever. Anyway, so we got these different segments. Each of these segments, if you're in this segment here, you might have this perspective or this perspective or this perspective or this perspective. You see that? That's why you got these 4 arrows going from that segment to those different perspectives. Meanwhile, if you're in this segment over here, you could either have this perspective, this perspective, this perspective, this perspective, or this perspective. So this one right here is a perspective which is common to both segments, which is possible from both of those segments, right? Anyway, we're just introducing some basic distinctions here. Segment of population, perspective. And then likewise, we can go a level deeper and say, okay, if this is the perspective, this one I'm highlighting in yellow, if that's the perspective that, in this case, someone from this segment adopts, there are 3 different strategies that make sense relative to that perspective, right? Now, big picture, what I'm suggesting here is that we get this perspective stuff handled and we get the segmentation stuff handled and we work with the author of that article that I'll post and we say, hey, look, here's what we need to do, right? We need to get these different segments identified. We need to get their perspectives identified. And we need to have some cross-perspective collective intelligence formed, okay? And, you know, what have we figured out strategy-wise? We figured out The tech sector is asleep. The private sector is asleep. Not just asleep, they're addicted to hoarding, and that's what blinds them from seeing. So then we went after the religious sector, and you know, that's a whole other realm, but rich with possibility, especially thanks to the Laudato Si published by Pope Francis. Now we're talking about building the seedlings of Arcology, right? The saplings, if you will, these community cafes with zero waste, zero single-use anything, zero plastic bags, and, you know, sourcing locally, local produce, local dairy products, local. And you know, we share everything from our perspective, and we say, you know, here's, because based on our perspective, we're building this platform for collective intelligence. We're, you know, working on Arcology. We've prototyped community cafes. Now we're going to build some permanent ones. You know, this is all coming from our perspective. How do we bring together different perspectives and have this open dialogue? And how do we define the questions, to specify the questions that basically the answers to which define your perspective? And then we can categorize people according to their perspective, right? Which would be extremely rich, as we've talked about in the past couple of years. So anyway, basically, you know, we work with that author and, you know, other folks in our community, and keep expanding that community, but with this in mind. And then with all these different strategies, that this whole layer down here of strategies, there's so many different strategies that people are going to, you know, talk about. And, you know, again, let 1,000 flowers bloom with respect to those strategies. And with this really rich, nimble, cross-perspective dialogue, conversation, and therefore collective intelligence, we can then get a grip on which strategies are actually viable and which are not, which will enable us to achieve our goals of saving as much of life on Earth as possible, and which will fall short of that goal, right? And, you know, now let's back up here in the realm of perspectives, right? So much of the perspectives is based on what you actually believe the state of the world is, right? And, you know, Dan Miller, not to pick on Dan, but, you know, he thinks that, you know, the world is stable enough that we don't need to revert to geoshading, right? That carbon tax alone will do the trick. For me, the evidence is abundant that that's not the case. And so let's look at the evidence, right? And so then we can have scientific conversations about just how urgent these situations are, as opposed to ideological conversations, which have no solution, right?
Yeah, and ideologies themselves can be subjected to the same, you know, the same process. In other words, ideologies are a part of the problem, right? Which require solutions. So it's not, so, you know, ideologies themselves are something that need to be addressed.
Exactly. Well said. And so, you know, we can subject everything to this same rigorous treatment, and, you know, and help people identify that, hey, I've got a perspective. You know, why? Well, because I believe this and I believe this. And then just versus that gal over there, she has a whole different perspective because she has different beliefs, right? And anyway, just getting that whole machinery working seems to be a big part of it. And then I took some other notes. Let me, okay, I don't know, can you read that okay, what I've got there?
Can you make it any bigger? I can actually just.
I don't know that I can actually make
it. It's okay. I can just get close enough
okay.
to.
Okay.
But yeah, but don't ask me to read it.
I'll read it out loud, and in fact, I'll post these notes as well. Let me make a point of that so I don't forget. Post.
Another thing you can do, since you're using the notes app there, is you can just select all of them.
Yeah.
And then you can turn them all into the title format.
Oh.
The title, because there's body, heading, and but don't worry about it, because that may. Yeah, and then if you go under the AA on the bottom right, on the keyboard, or and you do title.
Okay, there I did title.
Did you do title or just bold?
Oh, title. There we go. Title.
Yeah, like that.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a little bit bigger, but whatever.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so okay, there we go. Anyway, let me just read through the topics that I have here, and then I'll see where, and then I'll let you know where I'm. Well, no, let me save the topics for later. I've started to explore, like, in order to make all this happen, everything that we just talked about in the last 20 minutes, to make all that happen, what can we do, right? Well, to answer that question, this is sort of like a brainstorming exercise. What are our assets? What are our resources? Well, we have certain levers and actions. That's at the very upper left there. What are the levers and actions that we have? We have conversation. What we're doing right now, that's a lever. We have open source co-creation of designs, plans based on the preceding conversations. Stuff like we can do like on GitHub and other platforms that we've conceived of. And we can implement the best of those designed solutions. Anyway, these are all levers that we have. Okay. And then right below that, it says specific implementations. And that would be like community cafes, for example. That would be a specific implementation. And I'll read through the list of stuff above. And then we have, what assets do we have? And this, I'm clear that assets spans both existing assets and imagined assets. Like, for example, existing assets are, the internet and all the platforms, Twitter and Facebook and everything Google, everything that everyone knows about. And then the imagined platform is the CI platform, right? That's an imagined platform. It doesn't exist yet, but it would be, it would weave together all of our individual brains in ways that we've begun working on and we've made some progress on, but still have a lot more to go. But anyway, an RCI platform, for example, Radish platform falls in that category. It's an imagined platform that we're...
that reminds me of something we haven't talked about for a while, but we should talk about imagined communities. From CI to IC.
I like it.
Right?
Yeah.
Because imagined communities is not the same as an imaginary community. The reason why it's in the past tense is because it was once imagined and still is, right? But it was imagined into existence, like the United States of America, for example.
Exactly.
Which exists, right? But it exists in the minds of the people on the planet. So there it is, right? If everybody suffered from some strange amnesia when they woke up in the morning and they could remember everything except anything relating to the United States being, a sovereign nation, well, then there would henceforth be no such nation, right? Uh, and so I think here, collective intelligence actually, I think Imagine Communities actually bridges that gap between, you know, the imagined, quote unquote, or and the community. Between,
what is it
between,
what is it that bridges it?
sorry, let me say that again. The imagined community actually bridges the gap between collective intelligence as sort of theoretical proposition or set of propositions or strategies, like, you know, uh, from ideation to implementation, right? All of that, but all existing sort of as a blueprint. But from there, that puts it in the imagination so that to the extent that one acts upon that, it becomes a reality, right? It becomes real, not only because something has been built, but because people start to talk about it, kind of like hyperobject that Guy was always talking about, right?
Yeah.
An imagined community is something that exists in the minds of the citizens before there's, or the minds of the people, right? So if you want to talk about, you know, an arcology, the arcology to a certain extent can actually exist before there is some like physical infrastructure, or to the extent that one identifies with it or believes that it exists and identifies with it, or whatever, right? Uh, and I think that's a very expansive sense of arcology, but also one that points to the fact that the concrete manifestation of the actual physical infrastructure is sort of taking arcologies too literal and saying, you know, if there's not a physical infrastructure, then it doesn't exist. Well, show me the physical infrastructure of the United States of America. You know,
Yeah, it's an imagined community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I love it. That's brilliant. So, the imagined community is the bridge. I really like that, because see, we've been imagining a community and a radical collective intelligence community. We've been imagining that community for quite some time, and, you know, building out the pieces that will be required to build that community. Just like in the story Stone Soup, the pieces were a fire, a big pot, water, and a stone, right? So we're building out the pieces, the Radish platform being a piece, community cafes being another piece in the real world. And then I think that bridge can take on a lot more power once we have anchors on both ends of the bridge, right? Once we have the two buttresses on either end of the river or whatever.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to believe in it when you start seeing signs of its existence, right?
Exactly. And also, I really think that for a lot of people, this high level theoretical conversation is one that most people just aren't ready for, you know?
Yeah. If you don't mind, just for a moment, I'd like to actually continue this analogy of the United States, right? Because imagine the founders. You have these, you know, geniuses, basically genius level intellectuals, at least of their, you know, of their time and of all time, frankly. Not that they had all the answers, but, you know, far from it. But they were certainly at a different level of grasping this new thing called the United States of America than most of the people who lived in the 13 colonies, right? For them, they only started believing in it when they started to see signs of its actual, you know, instantiation in the real world. The founders were way ahead of it because they could imagine it on a more theoretical level, right? In existing in documents, existing in discourse, right? existing as a cause, as a, you know, imagined community. But the members of the colonies, for the most part, by and large, only really started to grasp this thing called the United States of America as, you know, they started seeing like, oh, look, there's there's an army, right, under the banner of, you know, the United Colonies or the United States or whatever they were, you know, calling it at first. Oh, and it has a general, George Washington. Oh, and, you know, they start to see signs of this thing existing, and that brings the masses on board. They start to believe it too because they start seeing signs of it in the real world. The founders already believed in it before that, but it took some instantiation in the real world before the masses began to be able to see it for themselves.
Totally. Love it. Yeah. No, beautiful. So, okay. So back to what I got on the screen here. So we have, you know, these levers of, oh, I think the text may have gotten smaller again, but who cares? We have these levers of conversation, open source co-creation, implementation, specific implementations like community cafes and gardens, etc. We have assets. Oh, yeah, so we talked about the imagined asset of the collective intelligence platform. We're imagining that asset into existence as we're imagining the collective intelligence community into existence. And speaking of communities, so we have very much like what you were just talking about basically the leaders and the followers, to oversimplify it. We have the people who clear the bar in terms of getting it to the point that they are committed. And these are the folks who have the potential to play the infinite game. They clear the bar, they have the potential to play the infinite game, but they still haven't been invited to the infinite game. That's part of our job, right? And then there's the rest of humanity playing a finite game. So there's those of us who are playing an infinite game, trying to keep the game going, trying to keep everyone in play. And then there are those who are playing a very finite game. The game of hoarding, for example, where you have winners and losers, and ultimately the big loser being all of life on Earth. So, you know, and then we have down below that finally strategies, right? Right there. Oh, there, I've got my pointer. So, so these are basically like our resources. And, you know, we've been working on different ways of getting humanity engaged and, you know, getting this whole thing built out so that we can achieve, you know, this vision I talked about down here on the screen. You know, getting the segments identified, the perspectives, the different strategies, and having, you know, open sharing about perspectives, about strategies, about, you know, segments, you know, who are you? Where did you come from? How did you come to that perspective? Well, here's who I am. Okay, you know, and then we can start to understand each other. And also in the process of building this imagined community, right, of collective intelligence, we, you know, we all realize that we're not so different and that we can bridge our perspectives. We can bridge our gaps. We can understand each other and respect each other and all come to a common mission, right, of saving life on Earth. So anyway.
Yeah, here's an imagined community, but at first it may not look like it, and that is the community of Earthlings. Right? the planetary community, uh, because to the extent, the cosmopolitan community, cosmopolitan, not in the false sense of metropolitan, but of citizen of the world. You could say, well, there aren't citizens of the world. There are stateless people, and there are citizens of states, right? One or more, but there's no such thing as a citizen of the world. However, that overlooks the um, the intersubjective reality of imagined communities. And to the extent that believe that such a certain thing exists and that they identify with it, there it is. And then you start to see manifestations of it in the real world. It's kind of like that famous photograph of the Earth called, blue marble. The first time that they shot a photograph of the Earth from space. Now you see it on like flags and stuff, right? So it's like, that's obviously somebody erasing the banner of an imagined community called Planet Earth. I'm going to take a quick bio break. I'll be right back in just couple, 3 minutes.
Why don't we just take a 5-minute break? I think our
5-minute break.
5-minute break. Okay. Okie doke. I am back. Hey, Michael. Welcome back. All right. Yeah, where do we go from here?
Well, I think this note, I think we've hit upon something with the idea of imagined communities in conjunction with both CI and Arcologies, right? You know, whether it's, you know, Gauss, for example, gives in Arcology a name in that book you read, right? Whether people identify with like a particular arcology, if they do, it would seem to me to be the arcology of the Earth, right? But of course, that has any number of local concrete manifestations, and you know, whether they're on Whidbey. One thing I wanted to broach was a community cafe in Thailand.
I love it. I love it. You know what? See, now you have begun to imagine a community in Thailand just in the last 10 seconds, right? You articulated. Now we're co-imagining it. And, you know, what we're talking about actually is building these community cafes in different cities throughout the world. And essentially, you know, whether they all launch simultaneously or more likely one at a time, you know, they all have the same fundamental ethos, and they all embrace Arcology. And they're actually, I mean, imagine that the name of the darn community cafe was Arcology. Arcology Bangkok, Arcology Whidbey Island, Arcology Cleveland Heights, right? Arcology New York, you know, kind of like Hard Rock Cafe.
Yeah.
But it's,
yeah, I like it. I like it.
because, you know, we say this is not a cafe, this is an Arcology. It's like that story of this guy's walking along a massive construction site and comes upon a bricklayer and says, "What are you doing?" Says, "I'm laying bricks." Walks along a little bit further. Another bricklayer, seemingly doing the same thing. "What are you doing?" "I'm building a wall." Walks on a bit further. Third bricklayer, seemingly doing the same thing as the first two. "What are you doing?" "I'm building a cathedral." We're building Arcology and collective intelligence, right? So it could be called Arcology.
Because it takes CI to create one, to co-create one.
That's it. It's see, we're bridging, we're finally fusing CI with Arcology. I think that was a missing link. And now that we've forged it, now the community can really be complete. Let me read foundation, building the foundation again. But see, now that we have the proper context, the proper perspective, it'll sound different. Building the foundation. Build where all cities would proudly reach. Keep it out of nations' borders. Right? Free from gripping politics. Its culture grows of Earth's reflection. Try not the model society here. Earthinia has a function. It synthesizes, it brings together the ideas, the actions, the life of humankind. An ongoing convention of global culture, aka transformation of culture, a computer bank of worldly data, global holistic model, plus all the conversations and indexes thereof and mind maps and everything else. A forum for solutions. Okay? Make it bold, make it noble. Plan for glory. In other words, don't try to do a little bunt. Swing for the fences and plan to hit it outside the park. Right? Don't bunt yourself to first base. Plan for glory, plan it wisely with collective intelligence. Do it right as time allows. There is no cause more worth your while. Michael Gosney, 1982 or 1983.
I didn't know that he had written a book about arcologies.
It's not a book about arcologies, though he's probably written one or two of those. it's just well. Here.
Okay, well, I kind of took that Arthinia to basically be a fictional or imagined, I should say, arcology, but whatever.
Yeah, this is simply a collection. This whole book is a collection of his various thoughts and imaginings and visions, right? As of 1982, 1983.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. So one thing I'd like to talk with you, whether on camera or off, would be just as sort of an exploratory conversation on the possibility of this kind of arcology, and I have some reasons for that, for exploring that. But we can talk about that, whenever is a good time.
Well, here's the thing. I say we model the transparency that is a fundamental aspect and facet of the RCI platform, and just talk about it. Now, personal details that you don't want to be publicly known, then don't talk about that. Anyway.
Well, then let me just explore it in a sort of a broad way. Why making the case for why Thailand would be a very good place to begin one. Not the only place, but let's say there were like 2 or 3 that we started with. That could be one of them. In addition to the fact that I'm here, that's clearly one of them. But we can talk about that later. But basically, Thailand, as you may know, is one of the most touristed countries in the world. People coming here from everywhere, basically, including places that you don't tend to see people visiting from too much in, say, Europe or the United States. In part because of its location, in part because of the fact that it's more affordable, to travel than a lot of other countries in the West. And for that reason, you have people from all over the world here passing through. Because the cost of living is low, it costs less to set up something like this. The infrastructure, the maintenance, the labor, the food, the whatever costs a lot less, a fraction. Also, it's quite a secure, country with the rule of law and everything. But at the same time, zoning isn't as stringent as it is in, say, the United States or the European Union, right? So you can kind of get away with legally with doing certain things in certain ways that you would have to go through like a mountain of, bureaucratic red tape to do in other parts of the world.
Very significant, extremely significant, especially given the breadth of what we want to do within the realm of arcology, including communal health, education, housing, you name it.
And people come here, not only to have sex with prostitutes, but to do things like yoga, to do like environmental retreats, to do, stuff having to do with the environment, et cetera, right? Whether it's to, anyway, and there are certain examples of those that I can share with you at another time. But basically, given all the different reasons why people come here, there can kind of be something for everybody, minus the prostitutes. But it's just, Thailand is just it's such a crossroads, really, of humanity.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So something to be explored further.
Right. Well,
at some point,
and that gets to right where I'm at right now, which is that beyond this summer, if we have an ice-free Arctic this summer, there could be no other time. And so I actually see it as a matter of urgency that we get this mapped out and started wherever it makes the most sense. And I think Thailand is a brilliant idea. So for all those reasons, and then, it can also become a place from where the idea can spread, right? I think it'd just be phenomenally popular. And the collective intelligence that's going to emerge there. Oh my goodness, incredible. So let's, I would encourage you to share this video with anyone you want there in Thailand and start to network around a little bit. There's got to be meetups in Bangkok of people who are very, working on ending hunger.
Oh yeah,
right.
I've browsed some of them, which there are a lot.
Yeah, and you could, I imagine there's a non-zero Catholic community in Thailand, much more than
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we could reach out on that basis, but let's see about building a coalition. In fact, a coalition of government, nonprofit, religious, educational, and so on, different categories of participants, and say, look, here's what we're planning on doing. It's fundamentally about making sure everyone has enough to eat. I don't imagine there's much of a hunger problem there in Thailand, or am I mistaken? Is there a significant hunger problem?
I would not call it significant.
Yeah. Okay. And is that
in fact, it's possible even that it's less significant than in the United States, but I'm just throwing that out there as a possible, that's plausible. That's plausible. There's such the ethos here is such that there are basically no slums anywhere in Thailand, and it's kind of like the culture just doesn't believe in slums. There's no caste system. Now there's certainly classes or class distinctions. No doubt about that. But social status is very important. But what you don't see are slums, even though there are a lot of poor people. But you don't, to my knowledge, see a big hunger problem either.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It's not India. It's not Latin America. They may not have much more money than those places, but culturally, they just, self-organize in such a way where it's almost unthinkable that people would just be like ghettoized and just like die of starvation, infested, disease-ridden, places of starvation or thirst or something. That's just not the Thai way.
Wow. I love it. You know what? So that's just brilliant, because no, I love it. I think it's a great place to do it from.
Oh yeah, I think it definitely could be, whether in Bangkok or whether on an island. I mean, there's an island, for example, where the world, which it bills itself as the world's largest party in the world, takes place once a month at the full moon. In fact, they have it more than that. They have like a full moon, and now I think they have like a new moon or a half moon or whatever party. But anyway, on this island, I've been to the island. Haven't been to the party because I guess I'm just not that interested in going to the party itself. But people descending upon that island in the thousands, and it's just kind of like a destination, right? People come there to be a part of this thing that they don't get in society. Now, what is that thing? Well, in a sense, it's what they come for is a lot more than a party, right? It's about being a part of this kind of uh, uh, coming together in a way that they kind of feel like they can step outside of the mundane, you know, world of commerce, right? And sort of lose themselves in some sort of ecstatic experience. Uh, Now, that's also, I think, one of the reasons why people come to Thailand, period, right? Whether it's to go trekking in the jungle or because they want to go meditate or do yoga, or let's face it, even have cheap sex, right? Kind of losing themselves in something that they otherwise wouldn't be able to do. Um, so it, it, it's a destination for seekers of all types, right? Passing through the land of smiles in search of something, you know. Uh, and of course, people, in so doing, you know, you, you come away, you find something of what you're looking for. In some sense, in some cases, you may be satisfied. In some cases, unsatisfied. But what we would offer is kind of a total experience of not like a permanent situation, but it could be kind of like a resort kind of communal situation where people can come and go and pass through and contribute to and help build it up. And kind of, you know what I'm saying? Not just to come to have an experience.
Yeah, part of the experience is the building of it.
Exactly, and bringing all of those different aspects into it, so that it's kind of so that it's holistic, right? And what it has to offer, it offers that social satisfaction, right? But there's also the therapeutic nature of what you're doing, the sense of contribution. All of these things are reasons why people would want to go there, just for that. I mean, if people are willing to go there to go to the world's biggest party, surely there's people who would find time on their itinerary, to go to some arcology that's being built on a tropical island.
Right.
And why wouldn't you? Come and leave, come and bring the best of yourself, and make your mark, so that when other people come, it's something. There's something more than there was before you came. Just in the spirit of an arcology, but in that sense, because people bring what they have to offer, there's a certain amount of unpredictability, even a certain amount of chaos in it. But then there's also this high level vision that unites people, brings people together in the spirit of co-creating, something that is it's an arcology. It's the discipline of arcology, practicing it, trying to perfect it. Anyway, I just think it would be the perfect place to put some of this theory into praxis, and also to apply CI and develop it at the same time. And because and then there's all the connections, because the people are coming from all over the world. They also go home to their home countries, and they bring what they kind of learned or what they experience, and then they tell people about it.
Yeah.
And they may even want to start one. Let's say somebody comes from the Ukraine, and they hang out, in this arcology, helping to build it for a week, and then they go back to work in the Ukraine, and they're like, you know what, we gotta start our own here.
Yeah, and also they'll be able to connect back in through video conferences, through
like they never left.
Yeah, like exactly. Yeah, and we'll create.
And money goes a long way. In a safe in a relatively safe environment where respect is sort of the order of the day, and people are generally peaceful and just want to be happy. That's the vibe.
Wow. Wow. No, it sounds like a perfect culture, cultural platform, because
yeah, exactly.
Because we need that cultural platform to support what we're creating, the arcology we're creating. So it could be Arcology Bangkok, a community cafe. Arcology San Francisco, a community cafe. Right? The brand would be Arcology, because that's what we're building here. We're building a cathedral. We're building an arcology.
Yeah, or if it's not the arcology, it's the category, and then it could say in arcology.
Either way, but I think doesn't arcology just sound like a badass?
It does, but I hesitate to use it as a brand name rather than as a category. But anyway, we can come back to that. We can talk with Gods about that, and Gaio, and Tony. I think it's tempting to use it as a brand name, but I think that's problematic in some ways.
Okay. Anyway, we can explore branding later.
But in a sense, if you include the category as sort of like what it is, that does by extension become a part of the brand. For example, if you said, if you called it, let's say you called it something to do with like, the earth, right? Kind of like Earth Rising, right? Which is already basically a brand name, in our, Earth Rising, Bangkok, right? In Arcology, or Community Cafe, or whatever brand we can still say in Arcology, and that by extension becomes a part of the brand name, kind of. Yeah, but anyway, who knows? Maybe just saying Arcology and just kind of usurping that word as a brand name will get a lot of traction. It'll certainly be controversial among those who care enough to, for those who care enough about Arcology to know what it is, to want to take issue with it. Gaz may be in that camp. Who knows?
Well, one powerful thing about naming it Arcology Bangkok, Arcology San Francisco, is people would ask, what does arcology mean? And then we'll tell them, and that
True.
It's just it really brings arcology into focus. Duh, right? By naming it Arcology,
Yeah.
It's like, what's Coca-Cola? Well, it comes from the coca leaf, and it gives you a buzz, right?
Right. By the same token, if somebody said, "Oh, I went to this thing," let's just say there's this thing called like Whole World, right? They went to it, and somebody said, "Oh, what's that?" You say, "Oh, well, it's an arcology." Oh, and then that becomes an opportunity to talk about what is an arcology. But either way.
No, I think the risk there is that if we call it Whole World, people will say, "Hey, I went to this place called Whole World." They'll say, "Well, what is it?" Well, it's basically a restaurant or it's a cafe, right? That's the risk. But if I went to a place called Arcology, what? Did you say ecology? No, Arcology. Well, what's that? Right? And the answer is,
I have an idea. You know how we use eco this, eco that? right? And then there's Arco Santi, right? Imagine Arco this, Arco that, an Arco resort, an Arco cafe.
Yeah, we can go places with that, but I think the term arcology itself is just really badass, right? It's a cafe called Arcology because it's not just a cafe.
So are you envisioning it as a cafe?
Well, it would start as
Like a community cafe?
yeah, but but depending on like if we had access to a big enough space or property in Thailand, for example, it could be community cafe, food store.
Right, like what we were talking about building on Whidbey.
Yeah, housing. Let people freaking crash there. Let tourists crash there. Let locals crash there.
Yeah, let people pass through there, sleep there, stay there for a time.
Stay there for a time. Really get
in there, farm there.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
That kind of thing.
That's it. And then we can have a bulk goods and dairy products and food section where everything is reusable. Everything is reused. There's no waste, no plastics, right? What do you? I would bet you. I've never been to Thailand, but I would bet you that in the markets there, if you go and buy bulk grain, bulk rice, bulk beans, they bag it for you in plastic bags. I would bet you.
Yeah.
Okay. We would shatter that.
They use way too much plastic, and that's become an issue of discussion in Thailand, but only recently.
Right. So we get to lead on that by having
we're on the cutting edge of something that's already happening, right? There's a parade that's forming here in Thailand and in Southeast Asia, right? And we just find it and walk in front of it. Actually, here's let's say people called it let's say we called it Arcology, right? Arcology Bangkok. People could just call it the Arc. Hey, I'm going to the Arc. But it could be spelled ARC. And then the logo could actually be like an arc, like the arc of history or something.
Yeah. I wouldn't be that explicit about the arc because it could be too presumptuous or even religious. But by calling it Arcology, everyone will call it the arc.
Well, I don't mean ARK.
Yeah, ARC. Yeah, I get it. Anyway, I think if we name it Arcology, people will naturally start to call it the arc, just like people call Coca-Cola Coke.
Okay. Well, why don't we just call it Arcology for now, because we know what we're talking about, whether it's the category or the brand or both. And let's talk about how to build, where we want to build one, how we want to start it. Because I think the main thrust of this is by putting CI, in practice. That's also how we're going to get people to participate in CI and on a CI platform. At least that's a part of it.
Exactly. And, moreover, Michael, like I said, I've never been to Thailand, but I imagine we can get good programming done there, good coding done, right? Where we actually network and find the right, so that becomes an integral part of it. The collective intelligence gets applied right there.
Even if it's not by Thai people, you have people from all over the world. Like I said, let's say you had a bunch of Russians, or whoever here who do code.
Exactly. No, brilliant. Brilliant.
So let's now there's one thing to just be aware of. It's certainly by no means a hindrance to what we're talking about doing. I wouldn't even call it a hurdle, but non-Westerners, non-nationals are not allowed, as far as I know, to own land.
Oh, I don't care about that. That's not a hurdle at all. We'll just rent.
But I actually know, fortunately, my girlfriend's Thai, and she knows, she already knows people who have land that is not being used, and
yeah,
and and it probably wouldn't be hard to find, land elsewhere, um, or land that is being used, but there's probably a lot of people who would be interested in using their land for a higher purpose.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So imagine we build it out as Arcology, a mecca for collective intelligence, ecology, and global transformation. Something like that. We'd find the right mix of words, but something aspirational like that. We just go big and bold. We get a beautiful logo for it. And we broadcast from there, right? And we say, come,
Right. The broadcast is kind of like putting out the SOS, the
Exactly.
signal.
That's right. And then this global transformation starts taking place, in the most unexpected of places. Like the Cuban Revolution started way up in the Sierra Maestra.
Yeah, we could even start it on some, tropical island, and immediately had some association with paradise.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. Love it, love it. It'll be like Fantasy Island, right? Um, wow, brilliant. Anyway, I love it. And then imagine we have big whiteboards there with post-it notes, and we have brain swarming sessions that are ongoing, right? And then we put a camera on there, and people can join video conferences. We're looking at it, Let's just make it simple. Make it really simple.
Frankly, that's another reason why Thailand is a good place for this. And one of the reasons why I am here is that it has the best internet of all of Southeast Asia, with the exception of Singapore.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I look at you, you're crystal clear. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And, this is I think a relatively average setup here. I'm on a 5K thing. I mean, a 5G thing. But I certainly get higher speeds at some other places I go in Thailand, certain cafes and stuff. But here it's having a hangout. Whereas in some places I've gone, like in Cambodia or in Malaysia, it hasn't been like that. Even getting on a Wi-Fi, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to surf the web.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand.
So anyway, it's got that going for it. It's also a major transportation hub, so it's not so hard to get to.
Yeah, it's very central. Very central.
Even if it's not in Bangkok, you fly into Bangkok, and from there you can easily get to any of the islands, because the infrastructure is set up for it. Thanks to all the hippies who passed through here, starting in, say, the 60s.
Yeah, got it. No, it sounds perfect. And because then it's only then that we actually begin to manifest and build the community, the imagined community. And it sounds like a perfect combination of relatively strong legal and security system with a pretty laissez-faire land use. It's ideal for our purposes.
Exactly.
I am certainly in favor of responsible land use and
responsible. All of that is much more flexible.
Yeah.
Especially if we get a Thai person who's kind of the face of it and is doing it as a Thai national. They can get away with doing all sorts of stuff.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness.
In fact, you may just want to hop on a plane and come over here. I could show you a few places, and in the meantime, we could, work it out, talk it up, and kind of, in situ, imagine, the community.
I love it. I love it. We could go from island to island until we discover Fantasy Island.
Yeah, and I've been researching places around Thailand. I've been to quite a few places, and other places I've been dying to go, and so I have a pretty good feel of the lay of the land by now.
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
But anyway, certainly, I certainly invite you to spend some time with me in terms of like lodging and stuff. Of course, I'd have to talk to my girlfriend about that. But even if you didn't stay more than a night or two, like actually at my place, it's so cheap here that, compared to what you're used to paying at an Airbnb, it would be relatively painless.
Good, good, good. No, that's all great. So yeah, no. Let me plan for it.
Anyway, starting to get on the more personal side. I kind of forgot we were recording for a moment, but whatever. Transparency.
Anyway, no, I love it. I'd love to come out there. I think I'll plan something in the next few weeks, maybe.
Yeah. FYI.
Yeah.
Weather-wise, the best time to come is like December through February. Beginning probably in the middle of March, things start heating up. And by April, they're hot. So just weather-wise, I'm just saying it'll be much more comfortable. The sooner the better in terms of the weather for your sake. Well, for ours, I guess, but it gets hot here, and that begins basically late March, early April.
Gotcha. Okay. Noted. Thank you. Yeah. No, I love it. And then we start, because once we freaking put our stake in the ground and start something, we call it Arcology. Arcology Thailand.
Yeah. Yeah. Arcology.
Because it sounds like a place, like Arcology Thailand. Well, where is that? Sounds like a temple.
It kind of is a place. Yeah, exactly. It kind of sounds like a temple.
It is a place.
And there's temples all over the place, as you know. Another thing we will definitely want to explore is instead of, or in addition to having one on an island, is actually having one in the mountains up north, because
Chiang Mai.
That's up around Chiang Mai, because up in that area and the surrounding countryside, loads of spiritual seekers, etc. Pass through there.
Well, seek no more. Come to Arcology, my son. That's where it's at, and it's beautiful. Love it. Well, here's the thing. Let's build a whole chain of these in Thailand.
Yeah, let's have one up in the mountains up north and down south on an island, and then maybe one in Bangkok.
That's it.
If you come to Thailand, you're one way or another, you're going to end up at one.
I love it. Love it.
And ultimately, it'll be way more cost effective, even given, you buying plane tickets and stuff. Just, and also, even though the people here are relatively, poor relative to Western standards. Now, it's not a third world country, right? It's a second world country, if there is such a thing, a developing country. That's got decent infrastructure by now, but the people here are very community minded, and you know, the local people love to share, love to, you know, it's not that it, you know, they're very private people, and they don't show a lot of emotion outwardly, but at the same time they don't erect the same kind of like walls that we do in the West, especially in a, you know, in a place like Seattle, you know, or even San Francisco for that matter. It kind of the spirit of what we're doing is sort of already baked into the culture to a large extent. So
I love it. I love it.
People, I think, would be happy to help out with this kind of thing. They would be happy to, you know, whether it's donating food, right? Thai food. I mean, come on. Whether it's, you know, coming to spend some time doing some work, even if it's only like an hour or two a week. You know, helping to get the garden ready or the farm, or to build some structures.
Yeah.
You know, and anyway, there's a lot of possibilities there where I think they're a lot less plausible on Whidbey. Now, I love Whidbey, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do that on Whidbey. I'm not saying let's do it in Thailand instead, but I'm well aware, just because I'm a Washingtonian, there are a number of impediments to what we're talking about that are in some ways just much less of an impediment in Thailand.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. But
socially, on the level of society, but also culturally.
Well, check this out, Michael. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the best way to get one of these built on Whidbey Island is to build a prototype in Thailand. Not just a prototype, but a working version, full-fledged version in Thailand.
And then you could show people at home on Whidbey that, check this out, don't we want one here? And it's like, yes.
Better still, yeah, you just invite them. Come check it out.
Come check it out. And it's a lot harder to get people to come to Whidbey. No, that's not true if you're like, you know, there on the West Coast or something. But I'm talking about people around the world.
Yeah,
to get people to come check it out for a number of reasons.
Yeah, but anyway, bottom line, let's start with Thailand, build it out there first, and then you know, then we'll have a working model, and they'll say, look, this is Arcology Thailand. Got it? Okay, got it. Do you want one in your?
That's it. Yeah. It's all about the first one, right? It's all about the first one.
That's it.
So where is the most promising place to build the first one? Well, I don't know, but I know that Thailand's is a top contender.
Thailand is definitely in the running.
In the running.
Yeah, and in fact, Argentina might be a great place to build one.
Something like that.
Yeah, Argentina, Uruguay, but I think Thailand is going to be that's the way to get a flying start, because you're going to have a lot of people who are traveling through Thailand who are already in the zone. They're
exactly
in the zone, and that's where we want them.
Yeah, it's way up there in terms of countries visited, and way more than a place like Argentina.
Yeah, nobody goes to Argentina. So, yeah,
exactly. They're in the zone. People go there because, you know, they're seekers of some kind. It's not like going to France, right, to wine and dine.
Exactly.
You don't go to Thailand, to eat and stuff, but you know, it's basically the seekers of all types go to Thailand.
Yeah, the perhaps one of the closest parallels in Europe, not that it's in any way identical, but one of the closest parallels would be Camino de Santiago in northern Spain,
That kind of thing. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but in,
so it
mm-hmm.
exists in Europe. Yeah, exactly. It exists. It exists everywhere.
But Thailand is a whole country of
exactly.
It.
That's right. And it's not just an entire region of which Thailand is the center.
That's it. That's it.
It's all of Southeast Asia, of which Thailand is by far and away understood to be the center, the hub of it all. That's where everybody passes through for the most part. It's got the best infrastructure, the best everything, with the exception of Singapore, which is kind of a world unto itself.
Yeah, Singapore is just a tiny little dot. Thailand
exactly.
is the vast country. Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've made our point. Now, you're welcome to come anytime, of course. So, I'll talk to my girlfriend about lodging and stuff, but I actually think what would be best would be to just get a place nearby where not only where, you can crash, but also where we can just, be ourselves, loud and proud Americans.
Totally. No, that sounds great. Yeah, let's definitely do it, Michael. Let's do it. Let's travel around. Let's see different islands, and then whichever island we do this on, eventually,
an island and a mountain.
An island and a mountain with a mountain creek flowing by with lotus flowers floating in the water. This is brilliant, Michael. I love it. Brilliant.
Imagine community. We're imagining it right now.
And who doesn't want to imagine beautiful Thailand, Thai food?
Land of smiles.
Wow.
Not land, land of, whatever that faces they do in Seattle, land of grimaces.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, Seattle is the land of grimaces. That's right. PC grimaces.
Gray grimaces.
The land of gray grimaces. I love it. All right. Michael, I think we've hit it outside the park tonight. What do you say we wrap up the recorded portion?
Absolutely. It's, what is it, 1:30 there? Almost.
Something like that. All right. Great to see you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you again, Michael. Great stuff, man.
See you in Thailand.